Before I start this audio, I'd like to say a few things. First, this is not a listener roleplay audio. Um, it is a police confession kind of thing. Uh, it the script includes kidnapping, child kidnapping, violence, murder. Uh, that's about it. Um, I'd like to say enjoy, but it's a pretty dark script. The date is December 27th, 2022. My name is Parker Smith, though I suppose I should go back to my maiden name soon. Last night, I murdered my wife, Rebecca. This is my confession. You probably think my wife is the victim here because she's the dead one. Maybe she is. I don't know. Rebecca did love me in her way. I I don't think she ever really wanted to hurt me. It's just an unfortunate side effect of keeping me in her life. We met senior year of college and began dating shortly after. She grew very attached very quickly. It seemed like she couldn't slow down. When I decided to break things off, I had no reason to be afraid of her. 3 weeks after graduation, she kidnapped me. I was tied to a chair for the first few weeks. It was 6 months before I was allowed to leave the basement, a year before I went on to daylight, almost 2 years before I was allowed in public, and never alone. There isn't much proof of what happened. My wounds are either healed or scarred over. Rebecca's tools are lost or discarded, or maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe she has them tucked away in the attic, like Christmas lights, not needed for today, but always ready for the future. I wrote a diary for the first few months. Day 59 of my captivity. But I knew she read it. She knew that I knew, so it became another game between us. After graduation, I had moved back to my hometown, halfway across the country from my college friends and relationships. And my relationship with my parents was strained. The only person who really missed me was my sister Alice. She looked for me and almost found me. I didn't even know my sister was dead for 3 months. We were fighting, Rebecca and I. We often fought back then, and she screamed at me. She screamed it at me. She apologized afterwards for telling me in the heat of the moment. My wife buried Alice in the garden and planted a rose bush over her. Sometimes I think about the roots tangled up in her bones. Every Valentine's Day, Rebecca would cut a rose from it and give them to me. There were opportunities to escape, I suppose. Things like that are much clearer in hindsight, but you can't always see them in the moment. When Rebecca would leave me alone, I knew she could walk back in at any time. When I worked in the garden, she could be watching me through the window. The uncertainty paralyzed me along with the knowledge of how far she would go. She brought pets home for me. They were the best gifts because I adored each and every one, and they were her worst gifts because she used them as insurance. No one questioned a dead dog. My opportunities to escape grew more frequent over the years, but I was well trained by then. Further, I was terribly afraid. How much could I really prove? How much damage could she have done before the police arrested her? If I stayed, I could contain the destruction. She was almost normal if I was compliant. After 6 years, we married. I signed our wedding forms with my left hand. I re I read in a book once that it wasn't legal if you don't sign with your dominant hand. I like that thought, that maybe we weren't married at all. I like to imagine how much that would unsettle her. I never checked to see if that was true. I had no interest in the truth. She took me out much more after that. I never thought of myself as much of an actor, but we put on quite a show together, Rebecca and I, the perfect couple. We continued like that for years, and she seemed happy. Life was easier when she was happy. Maybe Rebecca got bored of me. I was bored of myself. I was almost a blank slate by then. Nothing left a mark on me. Maybe she felt settled and secure. Maybe she would sense my distance and was looking for a way to tie us together. Regardless, she decided she wanted a child. I hardly existed, and she had a criminal record. No one was going to give us a baby. I was grateful for that. I did want children once upon a time ago, but not then. Not with her. I couldn't imagine the twisted mockery of a childhood we would have strung together. I told her 1,000 reasons why I didn't want a child, and I was convinced I had successfully tested her. I was so sure that she had let it go. I was very good at lying to myself by then. She hadn't done anything to anyone in so long. I really thought I was the only one in danger. If I had known what she was planning, I like to think I would have killed her sooner, or finally called the police. I don't know, something. Maybe that's a lie too. On Christmas morning, she came home with a baby, small and healthy, still covered in his mother's blood. She called him my present. I smiled and thanked her. I barely slept that night. When Rebecca asked, I blamed it on the baby. I didn't sleep the next night either. They had featured a missing woman on the news earlier that evening. She was 9 months pregnant, and she had disappeared on Christmas Eve. Her husband and parents were holding a press conference. They must have known she was gone right away and were standing next to the most beautiful photo of her. I thought about her son growing up, not knowing that she had ever existed, calling her murderer mom, wondering why his parents couldn't love him. I eased myself out of bed and whispered to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I always had an excuse ready. And a knife that was small enough to hide in my pocket. I crept back to our bedroom and into our bed, where we were face to face, when I plunged the knife into the hollow of her throat and dragged it across her arteries. I waited until Rebecca stopped moving, then waited another hour. Then I called the police to report a murder and to return a missing child. I thought it would feel good, finally being free of her. It just feels weird.